Thank you very much for listening to this week's talk on the Sedra of Tzav, the second Sedra in the book of Vayikra of Leviticus. And we dedicate our learning to the success and safety of all of the soldiers in the IDF and the US armed forces who are continuing to undertake dangerous missions and operations to eradicate evil at this point. And we also daven for the speedy and complete healing of all of the wounded, and refuah sheleima for Rivka Yittel bas Rochel. And as we will be reading this portion of Tzav, the Shabbos before Pesach, which is going to be next Wednesday night, will begin, the festival of Pesach will begin. The Shabbos is also called Shabbos Hagadol. This is the name given to the Shabbos before Pesach, and it's a very exceptional title because we appreciate the greatness of every single Shabbos. But in many ways, the Shabbos that precedes the Yom Tov of Pesach has the honor of having this special title. And I've mentioned before, it's especially apparent at this time of year, around before Purim and throughout the weeks in between Purim and Pesach, that there will often be different sedras read before the various festivals of Purim and Pesach. And so when we are reading the Sedra of Tzav before the festival of Pesach, it actually gives us an opportunity to make connections between Tzav and Pesach. And I think that if we look at one particular aspect of the Sedra of Tzav, and again, this is part of the ongoing content of the book of Vayikra, which is focusing very much on the service in the temple, in the Mishkan, as it was in the time of the Torah, which then became the temple, the Beis Hamikdash. So on the one hand, it is very focused on that, and as we perhaps some people find it more of a struggle to relate to daily lives, living in different times, also we observe. So we have this on the one hand, looking at these korbanot, these offerings, but actually we can see in looking at one particular korban that features in this week's Sedra and connecting it to Seder night in particular, and we can see how we are, as we are learning the ancient texts of the Torah, we are learning about the korbanos in the time of the Mishkan, and we can see that the gratitude training that we are learning, we are experiencing in the Sedra of Tzav is something that actually is preparing us for the apex, the high point of the Seder night. So hopefully all of these pieces will fit together. But the particular offering, the particular korban that I'm referring to, is known as the korban Toda, which is the thanksgiving offering. And we'll look at the verses in the Chumash, and we find it in chapter 7 of Vayikra, verse 15, and it reads as follows: Ubasar zevach todas shlamov, and the flesh of the sacrifice of his thanksgiving peace offering, b'yom korbono, must be eaten on the day of its offer. Yeachel, he will eat it. Lo yaniach mimenu ad boker, he may not leave any of it until morning. So just a bit of background on this particular offering, this korban toda. So it was one of the category of the offerings of shlomim, translated as the peace offerings. This was a voluntary offering that somebody could bring, and the written or the Pesukim gives us certain descriptions, and then the oral law fills in the gaps. And this offering was brought after somebody experienced four events that they had safely crossed the desert, safely crossed the sea. They had been released from prison or recovered from an illness, and we have the continuation of this concept. So even though at this moment we're not actually bringing the korban toda, we're not bringing that particular offering, but we have what's called benching gomel, saying a special prayer, and people will recite it after they have recovered from an illness. Women recite it after they have given birth, and sometimes people recite it after they have traveled. So we continue to keep the themes of this particular offering alive. So the interesting features that applied to this particular offering, we could just put them into two categories. The first that we just read out in the verse that we just read now was that the time frame for consuming this korban, this offering, was just the very day that it was brought. And this is in contrast to other offerings where one had the opportunity to consume the offering, and sometimes if some of the offerings were perhaps a large animal, a large farm animal, and so that would be a considerable quantity of meat, and this could be consumed the day that it was brought, the following night, and the day after that. So you would have, so to speak, day, night in between, and the following day that you were able to consume the offering. However, the korban toda had to be consumed within the day that it was brought, before nightfall. The second unusual aspect of the korban toda was the extra gifts that were brought with us, extra parts of the offering. Now, this was a huge quantity of baked goods. And there is something also exceptional in the composition of those baked goods. So, firstly, the quantity of the baked goods, which is described in the Torah, in the verses, chapter 7, verses 12 to 14, works out to be, although the quantities are not actually mentioned in the Torah, but the written Torah, but the oral Torah gives us the exact breakdown. So it consisted of 40 loaves. This equates to 26 kilograms of flour, and these loaves, 30 of the loaves were unleavened, so 30 were matzahs, and 10 of the loaves were leavened, were chometz. Now, this is very unusual in itself because on the altar there is rarely any chometz allowed at all. There are exceptions, but the general rule when we bring a korban on the mizbeach, on the altar, is that there can be no chometz. And the concept behind it is that chometz is a symbol of ego, of somebody, whether it's arrogance. And when we're bringing a korban, when we are getting close to Hashem, we're acknowledging that everything comes from Hashem. We are educating ourselves in humility, and this is sort of also one of the primary lessons that we can take from bringing the korbanos as we get close to Hashem. This should educate us in humility. So it's very unusual that we have chometz at all allowed. And how do these two things weave together this idea of our gratitude training, and how does that help us as we approach Seder night. So the fact that it had to be consumed on the actual day that it was brought, this is a symbol of the sense of urgency that when one experiences any type of event, and we can look at high drama, the times that we're experiencing now, the open miracles that we're seeing now. And this high drama, you could say, yes, you'll be so grateful, you're so aware. So firstly, that can actually fade quite quickly as well. But also in the so-called, perhaps less dramatic, less obvious aspects of our lives, again, to see the miracles, to work on ourselves, to have that sense of gratitude. But that needs to be expressed soon after the event. Then you are going to be full of the experience. It's going to be fresh in your mind, and the way you express it is just going to be that much more sincere, clearer, more accurate. And this is part of the message of making sure that you consume that particular korban within a shorter time frame. And the fact that there was such a large quantity of the extra grain products that had to be brought, including the unusual presence of chometz. Well, first of all, this was an offering that had to be, some of it had to be given to the Kohen. So out of the 40 loaves, 4 were given to the high priest, to the priest. But the rest, so that's 36, were shared by family, friends of the person who was bringing it. And this is something that is educating us that when we have experienced a particular event and we are expressing gratitude to Hashem for that event, that is something that we want to spread, that knowledge, that potential that Hashem has blessed a person in a certain way. It doesn't just stay with them. It radiates outwards. It radiates outwards in encouraging people to hope that they will at some point experience a similar blessing, and it's not done in a way of excluding, of being insensitive towards people who haven't enjoyed a particular blessing, but just to share, and also the tangible act of inviting people to participate in this festive meal. This is also sharing that blessing. It's not just staying with me. I'm not keeping it for myself, but I'm radiating it outwards. And this is a really important part of gratitude training. And gratitude is something that we can be trained to do better. We can be trained to, and this is precisely the way, as the Baal Shem Tov says, that gratitude is not just a thought. It has to proceed to action, to deed. And really, with this korban, we can see timeless ways that we can share the blessing. We can keep the message of this particular korban alive throughout all times. And again, the Medrash tells us that please God, in the time of the rebuilding of the temple, it should happen speedily and in our times, that all of the festival, all of the korbanos will no longer exist in their current form, except for this korban toda, except for this offering of thanksgiving. This is something that will always apply, that human beings will always need that element of training. And I think that we see it as we read the Sedra in such close proximity to the Seder night, that the apex of the Seder night, the most crucial part of the Seder night, which comes quite deep into the Magid section, the section of reading the Haggadah. So there's been quite a lot of material and lessons that we've learned before this point. But then there is this statement that the three concepts, words, Pesach, Matzah, and Maror, everybody has to mention them, everybody has to understand their significance. And this really is the fulcrum of the Seder. And it comes just after we have the song of Dayenu, the song that expresses the fact that at every stage of what Hashem has done for us, when we look back over Yetzias Mitzrayim and we relive these events, and we don't just say thank you and walk away. We go through stage by stage. If Hashem, if you would have done only this, it would have been enough for us. And if you would have done only that, it would have been enough for us. And the strange aspect is that actually it's not quite true. It wouldn't have been enough for us. We would have always needed the next stage. But the idea is that we are training ourselves to look at all of the components of one particular event, and in so doing, we deepen our levels of gratitude. And I think this is a unique opportunity this year to combine the message of the Korban Toda that we read about in the Seder of Tzav, which is also Shabbos Hagadol, and the Seder night. And wishing everybody a very good, safe Shabbos, Shabbat Shalom, and also a Chag Kasher v'Sameach as we head towards the Seder night with all of the hopes and prayers that we will take with us.